At dawn on the 25th of April each year, people gather all over Australia and New Zealand, and in fact all over the world, to hold services of remembrance for Australians and New Zealanders who have served in war and conflict. G'day, Rob Douglas here. I'm on Mount Clarence in Albany, Western Australia. It's generally accepted that the first Anzac Day Dawn Service was the idea of Reverend Arthur Ernest White, better known as Padre White, right here in Albany.
My belief is that Padre White is a part of the story that makes Albany Australia's home of Anzac.
Who was Padre White and what do we know about him? Well, to answer that question, let's visit St John the Evangelist Anglican Church in the main street of Albany. St John's is the oldest consecrated church in Western Australia.
Well, this is part of the Padre White display here at St John's Church in Albany, and we're looking at the extract of the Register of Services for 1930. And what it shows us is that on Anzac Day at 6 a.m. in 1930, Arthur Ernest White celebrated a service of Holy Communion at dawn, where 30 people were communicant and in attendance. Procession to memorial, wreaths laid, collection of a distressed soldier fund, and the first dawn service held in Australia.
The records show that the Padre White held a service at St John's Church in Albany. Wreaths were then laid on the war memorial outside the church, which was built in 1921, that is the memorial, and then a trek was made to the top of Mount Clarence to the site where Padre White's lookout now stands. And during that time, a sailor cast wreaths into the ocean in King George Sound.
Padre White was ordained in 1909 and served as a curate in Yorkshire before coming to Australia in 1912. He suffered from a chronic ear condition as a child and hoped the warmer Australian climate would provide some relief. He disembarked in Albany in November and for about 4 years was based in Williams, 250 kilometres north of Albany, serving with the Bush Brotherhood of St Boniface. Then in March 1916 he enlisted and was commissioned as a chaplain attached to WA's 44th Battalion. 2 years prior to Padre White enlisting, 2 convoys of more than 50 ships were assembled in this majestic harbour.
The hills around Albany, specifically the Padre White lookout and the Desert Mounted Corps Memorial Site, were the last sites that many young Australians and New Zealanders saw when they sailed out of Albany, King George Sound in 1914, heading off for World War I. As we know, many of them never returned.
Padre White may have held a service with his battalion before they sailed, but he didn't eventually sail himself until mid-1916. He served in France as a chaplain to the soldiers, but the bitter winter conditions in the trenches of the Western Front brought back his painful ear condition. Padre White returned to Australia in 1918 and was discharged. He came straight to Albany and conducted services here at St John's, honouring those who'd been lost in battle, followed by a pilgrimage up Mount Clarence. Shortly after this, Padre White moved to the eastern states where he had several appointments with the Church of England, returned to Albany as a rector in 1928. It was during this time that memorable dawn service was held. It's been recorded that Padre White is one of the best known and respected chaplains from Australia serving in France because he was always among the first over the top, ministering to the wounded. Before his death in 1954, he asked to be buried in a simple grave with a white cross bearing the words, "A priest." A humble man with a deep love for God and his people was once quoted as saying he hoped they would preserve and keep the dawn service on Anzac morning. The Anzac Day Dawn Service has continued to this day as an opportunity to honour the courage, endurance, mateship and sacrifice of the Anzacs, and to remember all those who have served our country. Thank you, Padre White, for your part in giving our nation an enduring tradition.